the reason why I'm here is because I wrote this book. I'll have to say that we're going to talk about what forced me to write it. Fitzgerald wrote the lines. He said, you don't write a book because you want to say something. It's because you have something to say. And it's really gratifying for me to realize that people have read the book and it has had an effect on them. It's kind of arrogant to entitle a book a survival guide for aging lives. And the first question that should come in your brain is, what would Chuck Edwards have to say? What would this burned out heart surgeon have to say tonight that would be of interest to me? That would have, what has his life been like that he thinks that he can write a survival guide for aging lives? Well, it is kind of arrogant, but I'm going to double down on that and say that some of the stuff, if you keep your heart open and your brain open, some of the stuff that we're going to go over tonight, maybe the stuff that you ask me will change my life, or some of the stuff that I tell you will change your life. But I hope that some of the things that we go over will have the potential to change your life. How did I write the book? I come from a long line of Celts. My father's Scotch-Irish, and my mother is Irish. And so any family gathering that we had was dominated by stories, marvelous stories. Stories where the little lady that lived next door is elevated to hero status and all the stuff that she did. And then the politician that lived down the street was reduced to rubble. And you had to be able to tell a story in order to survive in that environment. If you started off and it wasn't very good, they'd say, next time you're here, make sure your story has a point, and then we'll listen to it. So I became almost obsessed. I realized that each of us is writing a story, our story, every day. And my father was very clear that every decision you make and every act that you commit puts another paragraph or a sentence or a chapter in that story. And it made me very aware of throughout my whole life. Now, this almost obsession with it used to get me in trouble all the time, because people would ask me, you sure ask a lot of questions. Why do you want to know this stuff? But in the long run, it attached me not only to my patients' diseases, but it attached me to their lives. And knowing about their life made me a better doctor. It made me realize that when I learned, sometimes I would just ask a question. I would ask a question like, there you go, now you're talking. Presbyterians are not real good at listening, they're good at talking, so I was wondering if this thing was going to work. That I would ask them, have you ever had a problem with bleeding? And they'd say, yes. Or my uncle used to have a problem every time he got a tooth pulled or something. Doesn't really matter, but I would know that I had to check their coagulation very carefully to protect them from having a bleeding problem. So actually, that obsession with stories made me a better diagnostician, and it made me a better surgeon. So that's the first thing, this thread in my life about stories. The second thing is that for some reason I became a clearinghouse for my colleagues who were struggling, trying to navigate a word that they couldn't even say, which was retirement. And in the book, I developed a story, and it actually happened. Everybody thinks it's my buddy Katie Weeks in Charlotte, but it's not. But about a doctor, and he's getting ready to retire, and he hasn't prepared for it, and he's been burned out. And but that happened over and over again. And I started to see that it was so important for people to be able to make the jump from these successful careers to retirement. Now, retirement among women is completely different than retirement among men. Retirement among women is you got someone you don't want home for lunch, okay? But I started to see how fragile my colleagues were, and I wanted somehow to be able to shed some light on this. The third thing that happened was, of course, the tremor. And if you'll see if I was to pick up something, I was operating one day, and the person who was helping me said, "Your hand's shaking." I said, "My hand doesn't shake. You're mistaken." Well, it was shaking, and it was never a disability, but it was a sign to me that I wasn't going to be able to operate into my 70s. I was going to have to come up with a new gig, and it was very difficult time. I was born to practice medicine. My brain works this way. My whole approach to things is built around patients and their problems. And the idea that I wouldn't be able to solve those problems anymore or to be around patients literally terrified me. Why it did, but it connected me with a time in my life that I was also out of answers. And that was when both my parents sequentially developed Alzheimer's disease. And I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And we couldn't get any help. And in retrospect, it wasn't the doctors. They cared and they tried. Just didn't have the expertise. And so I had this idea one night. I'll just start a clinic taking care of people losing their memories. And I was all jacked up. And so I went into my wife and I said, "Mary, I got this figured out." And she said, "This is a bad idea." Okay. When we would go on mission trips and stuff, I always had this approach to the people that went with me. I said, in order to be able to help someone, you have to have a skill. All compassion begins with competence. You've got to have a skill. They got families that can hug them, but if you can't impact a situation with science or knowledge, you're not really doing anything. So she pointed that out to me, and I went back and wrote a letter, and we sent it to 3 institutions on the East Coast. And the sentence was, when a 65-year-old heart surgeon applies for a dementia fellowship, doesn't it prompt the question, should he be in the clinic rather than staying? And somehow that sentence connected, and I was accepted at 3 places. And as you know, I went to Johns Hopkins for 4 months where they helped me. My wife, she came around, and actually she and I, on the first day, it was just the 2 of us. We had no idea what a nonprofit medical practice was going to do. We had 900 square feet, and it was kind of scary, but all of a sudden the phone started ringing, and Mary would talk to them, put her arms around them, and sometimes she would come in my office and she'd say, "I've got someone that you've got to see. This is the Jones family." And I said, "Okay, well, I'll maybe look at the schedule and see when I can get them in." And she'd say, "They're here," okay? So that culture and that commitment to the patients and to their families has been the reason why we've been successful. And now we're in our 9th year, getting ready to go into our 10th year. I get 50 new patients a month. We have 5 teams. I just interviewed another doctor that's probably going to come from California. So I've been very blessed. When I came back from Hopkins, I knew everything about the patients. I studied hard. What I didn't realize was how how close I would become with their families, and how that relationship of being with them, making the diagnosis, taking care of them, and then being with them when they die, would change me as a person and change me as a physician. And it has been, I can't remember the heart surgeon, he's gone. The idea that I would take a saw and open up someone's chest, it's just not there. That's gone. So the goal of the book was I was impressed with all the reading that I did. I became convinced that normal cognitive aging is not that far off from the pathological process of dementia. Little steps in control of our lives as we age, and what happens to the brain as we age. Certainly it's out of proportion in people who have dementia, but there's a lot of truth in understanding dementia to help me understand normal cognitive aging. And that's where I happen to get the interest. And the book is more about what normal aging is rather than what dementia is. Okay. So the goal of the book was to address a lapse that science and all the scientific literature could tell us what the pathological process that hits the cells, and then also the domains in the brain. We could tell what happens. And in that domain, we know what happens. But it doesn't say how it changes your perspective. It doesn't change, or how it changes your behavior. And then pop culture comes along and says, oh, you need to take these 20 supplements, and you need to do this, and you need to do that, without any science. And when I read these pop culture things, I go, why do they want to fool these people? So what I wanted to do was to create a scientific link between the pathological process in the brain and how it affects our moods, our perspective, and our joy. So, all right, so one of the things that I did was I took 10 common mistakes that I saw people make in aging. And I started to use that in workshops. It seemed to be very effective when you would tell someone, look, this is what not to do, as opposed to, you need to do this. People respond a little bit differently. It's kind of like if you're in battle and someone says, now, you take care of yourself out there. And you go, okay, what am I supposed to do? Or someone says, there's a landmine right there. You got everybody's attention. So what I was wanting to do was to lay the landmines there so that you would be able to react to them. Tonight we're going to talk about 4 mistakes, common mistakes that people make as they age. And then I'm going to talk about 4 things that you have to do to successfully age. Now, I hate that term, successful aging, because each of us, everybody in this room, their brains are completely different. We learn differently, we express ourselves differently, we navigate life differently. So there's no way that there's one way to successfully age. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that pressure now for everybody to be the same person and lead the same life is really hurting us. So that's going to be one of the things. Okay. All right, common mistake number 1, underestimating the time left. All right, I'm going to give you a staggering statistic. Right now, in the United States, there are less than 100,000 people that are 100 or greater. Less than 100,000. In the year 2050, 27 years from now, almost, there are going to be 800,000 people over 100. Okay, now let me say that again. 800,000. Many of you people who are in here today, late boomers. I'm an early boomer, 1947. But late boomers, a great percentage of those people and the people in this room may still be alive in 2050. Okay. If you make it to 65, your lifespan average is 84 years. If you make it to 70, you get one more year on that. You get 85. If you make it to 80, the average lifespan is 89. So the longer you live, the longer you're going to live. The day that my dad was born, October 30th, 1920, he had a 1.3% chance of living to 100. The day I was born, August 5th, 1947, I had a 3.1%, or still do, I still have it. The day that my daughter was born, October 6th, 1973, she has a 21% chance of living to 100. So we are going to live longer, and who makes it? We all do. A lot of us will make it. Now, there was a famous study that was done in published in 2008, and it followed 2,357 men. They happened to be doctors, which is a little weird, but the average age of the study was they were 72, and they studied them for 25 years. If you had a normal blood pressure, were not diabetic, were a non-smoker, and you exercise 2 to 4 times a week, 54% of that group lived to 90. So with control of certain aspects of our lives, we have a chance to live 25 years after 65. Now, for people who have been had careers, the time after your career is going to be just about as long as your career was. So we've got to get this right. We're going to live a long time, many of us. And so therefore there are compromises, there are things that we need to do to make that look like what we want. What I want it to look like is an endless sequence of days filled with joy and purpose. I want to be connected to my friends like here in this hall, and to my family, not in a distant way. I want to be connected viscerally. I want to be tethered. And so when I die, I want to leave a big hole. And the only way that you leave a big hole is to have touched other people's lives. So that's the whole sustaining factor. Human beings need each other. One of the questions that I ask people as they age is, how many days, who's a single, sometimes I have more single women than I have men, obviously. Women live longer. I ask them, how many days now, since your husband is gone, do you go without seeing another human being? If I get the answer 1 or 2, I'm okay with that. But 4, I know they're declining. I know that it's not working. So that human interaction is really important. I looked up on a longevity app. I don't think that's the name of it, but you can type in, it says, how long will I live? And they ask your height, your weight, whether or not you've had surgery and all that stuff. And my expected lifespan is going to be 92 years. Now, I don't know whether I want that to be true or not, but we'll see. So the bottom line here is, you hear this lament all the time. If I could just do this over, if I could just have another shot at life, I would do things completely different. Well, actually, we do have a shot at doing things over. We can atone for things that we just didn't do right. It might be something as simple as, I didn't spend enough time with my children, so you spend more time with your grandchildren. But having that thought that this is going to run out at some point, and this is my story, sometimes that puts a lot of charge into people. All right, common mistake number 2, being unaware of the effects of aging on our brain. Because if we're not aware of how just age affects us, we can't compensate for it. Okay, we got to know what's happened before we can adjust to it. So every week we get a call from someone, and that person will say, my father or mother had Alzheimer's, and some things have happened recently, and I know I got it, and you got to see me right away. I got to come in. All right. So here's a story I wrote about a buddy of mine. It's a true story. Some of you know this person, so I'm not going to tell you. I call him RGB. Is a 70-year-old friend who frantically calls one afternoon. I am losing it, and I need to see you this afternoon. My father had Alzheimer's late in life, and I knew this would happen. I got it. I asked, what has prompted this? It was 3 weeks ago I was with you, and you weren't all fired up. There was no sign that anything was wrong. I don't think this panic has been around too long. He says, 3 things have occurred in the past 2 weeks that have convinced me that I'm definitely losing it. The first 2 happened on successive nights last week. I will often wake up in the night and have trouble going back to sleep. I will go down to the kitchen and eat a bowl of ice cream. It's not a good way to treat insomnia. Okay? So I'm not advocating this. On this particular night, I left the freezer door open. Sarah came down in the morning and was obviously really upset that I had been so careless. The killer was, I did the exact same thing the next night. Now I'm beginning to doubt myself, and she is rolling her eyes and thinking, here we go. The third clue is the hardest. I have played golf with the same foursome Wednesday afternoons for more than 10 years. We were teeing off, and I realized that I could not recall the names of 2 guys in the foursome. These are my close friends, and their names had left me. Gone. Get this. I had to sneak around the cart to look at their golf bags to read their names. I said, he says this, he said, are you kidding me? I definitely have been slowing down since retiring. I'm not as sharp with names, and forget about new technology. I lost the ability to turn on my TV with a new remote. I had to get my son to come over to turn the damn thing on. He put duct tape over one button that apparently can't be pushed if you want to turn the TV on. He got RGB in the clinic and took a careful history, tested him, did neuropsychological testing. He was fine. So I used the best medicine that I can find, which is reassurance, and to give him back his confidence. And he went on and he's living a completely normal life. He's not in the clinic. But the story is not unusual because we see that all the time. But if you know that there are certain things that I don't care about, then you can sort of adjust without having to go through that panic. So what not to worry about, okay? The first thing is memory lapses, where you go into a room and you forget why you're in that room, okay? And so what happens is that you've left the room that's given you the clue to why you want to do something. Let's say that you're hanging a picture and you leave that room with the picture, and you go downstairs, and when you're downstairs you go, why am I here? What you do is you go back upstairs and it immediately comes to you. So go back and get the same clues. That is not a serious issue. Names, okay, names. I don't care about names. Names they're a moniker that are an abstraction. When you can't remember someone's name, you remember everything about them, okay? A picture of their face comes up in your brain. And you say, I remember that this is like in my brain, I remember that guy had the prettiest sister, and I think all about the sister, but the name doesn't come because it's abstraction. The fact that he would be Joe Smith makes no difference. So I don't care about names. Oftentimes when we meet people, the guy will say, my name is Sam Smith, just as clear as a bell. And you'll turn away and you'll say, oh, wait a minute, what did he say? It's because we didn't focus. We didn't think about, I want to remember this guy's name. We're thinking about, well, I wonder if he'll think I'm cute, or he had on a kind of a funny looking shirt, and we get distracted. Don't care about names. All right, now technology. There's a thing called fluid intelligence. Fluid intelligence is our ability to solve problems independent of life experiences. And it starts to decline when we are 28 years old. And names and technology are all part of that. Now, actually, technology has changed aging. All right, my grandfather he probably may have finished the 8th grade. He was an Irishman from South Boston, Massachusetts. He became a politician. If he walked in that door, he would have on a Panama hat, seersucker suit, two-tone shoes, and he would be an event. He took us everywhere. He loved to have my brother in there, and he loved to take us to Civil War battlefields. And so when we were younger, like 9 and 6 or 8 and 5 or whatever, he would tell us these stories. And he'd say, this is where the rebels were fighting the Yankees, and there were dead bodies all over this. And we'd be fascinated. Well, as we got up a little bit older, we realized he didn't have any idea what happened in those battlefields, okay? And we would read the sign, but it didn't matter. His stories were a lot better. And every word he said to us throughout his whole life was reverential. We put real stock in it. Me, now, to my grandchildren, I'm the guy that's not quite as smart on the iPad. I'm not quite as smart, and they will actually take the iPad out of my hand to show me how to do it. And what really makes me mad is when they come and you are stuck, and they'll reach over and hit a button, and all of a sudden everything comes up. And I'll go, where in the hell does it say that button will do that? You have no idea. Okay? So technology I don't care about. One of the things that happens to us when we age is we lack the ability to pick up errors. All right, now there's a chapter in the book about super agers. Now, all of y'all who think you're a super ager, I want you to buy the book, okay? Because super agers will walk into a room and they will immediately pick up what's wrong. They will it'll be something, or there'll be a clock that's not on the right time, or there'll be a light out. It just seems like that those people are into what doesn't fit. But that's one of the things that takes away from us is eras. We're not quite as easily to pick up on what doesn't fit. This becomes very important as we age and drive. So we have to be very vigilant about when you are getting ready to go somewhere and you're in your car. I like people to sit at the wheel and picture where they're going. Picture where they're going. I see patients, now it's Wednesday afternoon, but it used to be in the morning, and I see patients in their homes, or I see patients at their facility because they've gotten to the point where they can't get to the office. It gets too dangerous and they're going to fall. But there's a place in Charlotte where the Giant Genie used to be, and there's a place, there's a coffee house that's in the back. And I go there and get coffee before I go and see the patient. And one of my patient's wife has a little kiosk up about 2 doors up from the coffee house. And the patient comes out of the kiosk as I'm coming out of the coffee house. And he says, I know you. And I said, Mr. Jones, you do know me. You do know me. He said, high school. We went to high school together, didn't we? I said, no, sir, we didn't go to high school together. I said, Mr. Jones, I'm your memory doctor. He goes, you're doing a terrible job. So then I get in the car and I start to drive away. And he comes flying at me, he goes, stop, stop. And I'm thinking, what does he want? And I roll down the window, and he reaches up and gets my coffee off the top of the car and hands it to me. And then he said, you can't believe how good this makes me feel. So lapses like that, we all do it. And it's almost like we feel we are so stupid that somehow you've got the wrong key to open the door, or you lose a sequence, and then you feel terrible about yourself. Well, I want you to understand those lapses, those things that are not common, we want you to hold them lightly. Don't allow yourself to cycle down. If you have dementia, it's not going to present that way, because oftentimes patients with dementia, they don't know that they don't know which key it is. They don't know, they don't have that insight. So insight, when people come and say, I'm losing it, I'm already skeptical. About memory, though, is as we age, there's one thing that you have to realize. There are two aspects to memory. One of those is the file cabinet. That is the portion in the brain where you store memories. Then the other is the file clerk, and that is your brain saying what you want to remember. Okay, that this is important, and I am going to remember this. Oftentimes we don't have a problem. If you have dementia, the file cabinet is gone. Even if you want to remember, you can't, because there's no place in your brain to put short-term memories that you can pull it out. The part of that brain is gone. It's called the hippocampus. Most of the time, it's focus. Okay. Now, the part of the brain that is the most important, and it actually is the most important advancement in all of evolutionary history, is the development of the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's right behind your forehead. This is, if you look at Neanderthal pictures, they got a squash there. They got a flat forehead. Some guys that went to UVA on the football team that have that too. So when we started to develop this prefrontal cortex, it allowed us to do several things. One is it allowed us to solve problems. It also allowed us, when we could solve problems, it gave us thinking into the future, gave us hope. How can we manage things not to have this problem? Okay, so the prefrontal cortex does several things. It gives you sustained focus, the ability to concentrate, which is crucial to solving a problem. Then it also filters out distractions, and it allows us to have selective focus and sustained focus. It allows us to filter out those distractions, because if you're totally distracted and you have a lot of chatter in your brain, you can't focus. But those two things allowed us to get the wheel, dynamite, paper, the atom bomb, everything comes from that. Now, there is a bad deal that we got, though, because when we can see into the future, we have hope. But what else did we get? We got anxiety. We're going to talk a little bit about that maybe at the end. But somehow, anxiety has increased in our society so much. I'm not so sure it's a good deal, okay? But we'll get to that. Multitasking. Think about so the two things that get hit the most are the ability to filter and to be able to multitask. Think about a young woman. She is she's cooking dinner, she's talking to her mother-in-law, and she's got 3 children underneath her. I don't know if that's, this is an old one. The mother's doing 3 things. The child gets a little too close to the stove and she moves him away. She's mad at her mother-in-law and they're going back and forth, and she's cooking dinner. She's doing all 3 things at the top of her form. Okay? As we age, we can't do that anymore. All right? We can, if you're in your 40s, maybe 50s, you can do 2. But when you get up into your 60s and 70s, just do 1. Okay? And also about the distractions. You understand that you are doing something. You're doing your checkbook, which used to take you 20 minutes. Now it takes 3 hours, and you come back the next day, and you realize you made an error. But if someone interrupts you, you don't go back and start over. I mean, you don't pick up where you were. You got to go back and start over. Those are all things that are consistent with aging. We cannot multitask, and we cannot filter distractions. So we work shorter intervals. And then we go and take a rest. Let's say we're going to do I'm going to sit down and I'm going to work for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to get up, I'm going to go do something else, and then I'll come back. Okay. Common mistake number 3. And this is probably the most important aspect of this talk. Common mistake number 3 is not knowing the 5 ways that you can protect your brain and and your life. These are crucial things. The first is not recognizing the sign of depression. Now, in the general population, about 15% of people will suffer from depression. As we age, though, that number starts to climb. And not only does it climb, but the manifestations of it change. So someone's 22 years old, their body habitus, they're down, their physiognomy, you can tell, you go, he's depressed. Okay? If you see someone in college, that might be bipolar, it's just there. As we age, those signs of depression become much more subtle and often tangential. It may be that someone that would never have been irritable or angry, all of a sudden they have a personality change and they're angry or quick to anger. Sometimes it's apathy, where they don't want to do things anymore. They'll be accused of being lazy because they don't want to do yard work anymore. I had that when I was 20, or this terrible reaction to things, which is called anhedonia, which is the loss of pleasure from things that used to give you tremendous pleasure. So we want to be very aggressive about treating depression. About half of my patients who are in the clinic who have memory challenges, or even think they have memory challenges, have depression. So that's one, depression. The second thing is that hypertension drives memory loss. Okay. Now, Dave Reinhardt knows about this, but there's a town in Framingham, Massachusetts. There's a town in Massachusetts called Framingham. And in 1946, the NIH adopted that town in order to see if they could change the outcome of heart disease in that community. And they brought all of these experts in, and they got people to stop smoking. They got them to alter their diets. They started to drop their cholesterol. And over succeeding decades, they dropped the incidence of coronary artery disease in that town. Then they went back and looked at dementia in those same decades, and it mirrored the decline in heart disease. So arteriosclerosis and arteriosclerotic cardiovascular factors drive dementia. Now, it's not Alzheimer's, it's vascular dementia, but still, when you go to the doctor, now I might get in trouble here, all right? But all of a sudden the nurse comes up and she takes your blood pressure. And she said, oh, you're a little nervous today. Your blood pressure is 160/95. And you say, every time I get around white coats, I get nervous. And she said, oh, well, okay. And then she goes out. Sometimes she might come back. All right, the white coat syndrome does not exist. It does not exist. People that, when they get nervous, they'll jump up anywhere. They might hit a red light and go to 170. So there are certain levels. For instance, if someone's in their 80s, I'll let them have 140. I might even let them have 145. I'm not going to let them have 170 because if I consistently allow that. So we are obsessed with bringing hypertension down. And it's interesting because the drugs that we use to treat hypertension, the prills, the ACE inhibitors, or the ARBs, are associated with people that are on them have a decreased incidence of dementia. So when you are having your blood pressure checked and someone says it's 170, don't worry about it. You say, I want to see the doctor. Okay? You got lots of good doctors here in Belmont, by the way. Sleep. One of the most overdiagnosed entities are sleep issues. And back when Medicare was paying full price for anybody with sleep apnea, you had more sleep doctors. Every corner had one, okay? Because they were getting, and then Medicare said, we're not going to pay you anymore, and so they all dried up. But if you have, if your wife or husband, the course, women don't snore. And if you tell your wife she snores, you're going to be sleeping by yourself. Okay? Believe me, I know this. Mary doesn't snore. Okay? So sleep. If your wife tells you that you're snoring out loud and you stop breathing, then you need to get evaluated and have a sleep study. The number one marker in a lifetime for the development of dementia is hearing loss. I'm going to say that again. The number one marker for the development of dementia in a lifetime is hearing loss. More so than genetics, more so than arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So if you are, if you got the TV all the way up, or your husband says you can't hear, you need to have it tested. The reason is two. One is the social isolation, certainly, but more important is that any cell, neuron, that is not stimulated will die or malfunction. And think about this. The center for short-term memory is in the hippocampus, right where sound waves go through. We're not entirely sure that that's the etiology, but hearing loss. Now, all they do is put a very small little aid in your ear. You can't see it, no one can see it, and it opens up people's lives. Don't fool around with hearing loss. All right, I'm going to make a point. David might kill me on this, but destructive medications. There's one group that we never use, and they're anti-anxiety medications. They are Xanax, Ativan, especially Klonopin, Valium, and Librium. Now, if you're on them, don't stop them. Okay, the joke at Hopkins was don't ever start them and don't ever stop them. But with Klonopin, it's terribly destructive for memories. People use them. Ambien falls into this. Tabazepam falls into this for sleep. But it takes me a year and a half to get someone off of one of these medications. So do not stop it. They'll kill me. Okay, but they are extremely destructive, especially Klonopin. So now, if they're using it for restless leg, and you only take a small portion, that's okay, because restless leg is very destructive. But you just have to be careful, because if you go with a problem to a doctor, oftentimes they'll put you on a medication, and that medication may have more side effects than what we're going to treat. So just be really careful about that. All right. All right. This is the last one that I'm going to do, is find the common mistakes, and this is really important. And it was pointed out to me during COVID that I saw this all the time. And common mistake number 4 is allowing negative thoughts and anger to take a foothold on your thoughts and perspective. Anger is a very destructive process. I think it comes from, I wrote in the book the sentence that I used to have to deal with it in a lot of the patients that I took care of. And I think it was a precursor to a lot of coronary disease. But anger comes from feeling like that you've got a bad deal in life. Somehow that the cards that you've been dealt are not fair. And it's a core thing. And so then when someone goes by you on the freeway on 85 or something, he's going real fast, you say, there's another example of why I'm getting a bad deal. So anger is something that needs to be evaluated. But where I'm going with this is that positive thoughts breed positive actions. If you were watching a Jerry Seinfeld monologue, and you know how funny he is, and you start to tear up a little bit, if you analyze those tears, they are different than the tears that you would shed when you're sad. Okay, when Ingrid Bergman is walking away from, what was his name, in Casablanca? Humphrey Bogart. Okay. Analyze those tears, the composition is different. So what that tells us is that what we see in our lives immediately affects the chemistry in our brain. And we have a dialogue that we have with ourselves, okay? This left brain is what we put out to the world. It's, I can measure up. What do you expect of me? I'll do what I have to. And it is where we boomers have competed with one another. And who we are is over here on the right side. But that voice is so soft because we can't hear it. That's who we are. Someone says, hey, can you play golf? And you say, yeah, I can play golf. And the voice on the right side, you're going to make an idiot of yourself because you can't play golf, okay? So, but we do that. Now, we have to control that dialogue. It's so easy to have negative thoughts and to be angry. And how I saw this in COVID was that my patients were all stuck at home and they're watching TV. And what happened was they would come back to the office and I would say, well, how's your buddy Joe Blow? I said, I can't be friends with him now because we disagree with each other in politics. And I said, really? What did he, has he become a communist or what? He said, no, he just, he either loves Trump or he hates Trump or whatever, but I can't be friends with him. Now what's happened is that they're at home watching MSNBC or they're watching Fox, and they're allowing themselves to be emotionally manipulated, to have disdain and to have hatred for people that disagree with you in politics. Politics are not that important. Every one of these guys up there, they always screw it up. There's not a lot of difference, but the idea that we would be manipulated by that 24-hour cycle, get the news. You can get the news from Fox or MSNBC, but don't allow it to emotionally involve you and change. I don't care how you vote. Some of the best people I know are Democrats, and some of the best people I know are Republicans, and it has nothing to do with their politics. So be careful about being manipulated. How this works in real life is that a young mother is she's gotten up late, and she's got a child that is not easily to dress and get ready for school. So she's about 10 minutes behind, and the kids are going to be late to school. And so she is driving on Park Road trying to get her kids to Holy Trinity. And there's a little old lady, and you can just barely see her gray hair up above the seat. She's driving along, and all of a sudden she just slows down, and she's moving over to the right. Now this mother, who's gotten up late, she's got her own issues, is driving along, and she has immediately the negative reaction. It is, that old lady shouldn't be on the road at 8 o'clock in the morning. She can do what she wants at 8 o'clock at night, but I got to get my kids to school. And she goes flying by her. She might even flip her a hand signal, and off she goes. She has immediately filled her brain with negative neurochemicals, neurotransmitters. And for the rest of the day, she's going to see the negative side of things. Okay? Now, come back and see a different way to handle that. It's, oh my God, not thinking about herself now. I wonder what's happened to that lady. She shouldn't have just gone off the side. So she parks behind her. She gets out and she sees that she can't move her arm, and the side of her mouth is down, and she realizes that she's had a stroke. So she takes the phone and she calls 911. She goes, gets her children, and puts them in the back of the car with this lady, and they sort of take care of her until the EMTs come. Two things. One is, she is going to slow down. Of course, she's going to have an excuse for being late, but her brain, because of the way that she's acted, is filled of these chemicals that allow us to reach out and to be kind and to be aware of others. And the kids are going to learn from that's how you handle a situation. You don't angrily go around and give people hand gestures. You reach out to other people and see if you can help. William James wrote these lines: "The greatest discovery of my generation is that a human being can alter his life or her life by altering their attitude." Coming down to it. These are 4 things that are critical for you to do. All right? The first is smile. Okay, you say, well, I smile all the time. If you look around these days, you go into a restaurant, you go into the Black Hawk Hardware. That's probably a bad example because everybody's pretty happy over there. Does anybody know about Black Hawk Hardware? In the Park Road Shopping Center? It's the center of the universe. It's right there. Smiling does two things. One is, it's a message to yourself. When you smile, people look at you, that you're telling them, the world hasn't gotten the best of me yet. I got a little bit of tread left on my tire, okay? And if you're smiling in a strange place, that really messes people up. They say, what's wrong with that guy, okay? The second thing is you can actually feel it. When you smile, you walk into a room, you walk into a restaurant, and you walk by a table, or you walk by a waitress or something, and you smile at them. You can feel the neurotransmitters going up in your brain, okay? When those cheeks go up, you can feel you're pushing those positive neurotransmitters up into your brain. It also changes the communication you have with yourself. The most important conversations you're going to have in your life is when you're talking to yourself. You're saying, I didn't do that properly, or I love that person. I'm going to show them that dialogue is who you are. And if you control that with positive thoughts, your life starts to take on a different aura. The second thing is, don't give up. Okay? Once we get to a certain point in life, it seems like things are so hard. I don't have a staff anymore. I don't have a company plane. I don't have a secretary. I got to do everything myself. I think I'll just sit here and watch TV all day because I'm sort of upset that I don't have a lot of stuff going for me. And in that dialogue to yourself is, and I used to be so important. I used to have, you can see it in airports. The guy will be walking about 10 steps in front of his wife. And he will look like he is on, the Normandy beaches going like this. And his wife is trying to keep up. She's got 2 bags. He's not carrying a bag, okay? So he used to have a corporate jet, and he's, a little bit upset. What you did in your life, it needs to be a period at the end of that sentence, because if you try to bring that to this next phase in retirement or later in life, you're lost, okay? Mourning the loss of what you had or who you were is too easy, and it prevents us from the hard work of making a life out of what we have left. One of the things that's happened in the South is that we used to celebrate characters. Okay? We were tolerant of people. There might have been a guy here in Belmont that everybody knew drank too much, okay? And he would wander downtown, but he had some money, he would donate it to people, he would help other people, he was a writer or a poet, and we gave him, on the whole, he's a plus. He's a plus. Just because he drinks too much. Nowadays, there's so much pressure to conform that we write off people that are different than us. But what makes life interesting? It's people that think differently and act differently, that look differently, that add that spice to life. If we're all thinking the same thoughts, we don't go anywhere. We don't advance. So trust the fact that you're a character. Now, what's happened with this cancel culture is that no longer do we celebrate individuals. We celebrate individuals who give billions of dollars to the people starving in Africa, but they treat their staff and their family terribly. Bill Gates is the most famous guy, and if you've read these articles, he's a big jerk. But everybody celebrates him because he gives a lot of money away. He'd be better off just to treat his wife and his children a lot better, and then save the money. I don't care what he does with his money. But the individual it's the most amazing phenomenon that we have individuals that are all different, but they have character, and they care about who they are, and they care about those character traits. We were raised on that. And now some of those character traits are diminished. They say, oh, that guy, he used to be a really good guy, but no one speaks to him anymore because he is a Trump guy, okay? or the opposite. So don't allow others to cancel. I want people to speak out. It's when you disagree with me that I'm interested. If you agree with me, I'm not going anywhere. All right. The last thing is that we have to learn how to accept loss, because we are going to lose things. We are going to lose loved ones. We are going to lose the ability to play golf, or we're going to lose, some of us will lose the ability to walk. We're going to lose the ability to do lots of things. And if we, again, go back and are bitter about that, we just have to deal with the life that we got, okay? Now I'm going to read one thing that this is important, because this is the guy that wrote the poem Much Abides, and I'm going to end with it. This is Alfred Lord Tennyson. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength in old days that moved heaven and earth, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but we are strong in will to strive, to find, and never to yield. All right, thank you. Questions? Comments?
We thank you. If anyone does have a question for Chuck, please raise your hand. I'll run up to you and give you the microphone. You can ask it. This is Presbyterian. People don't raise. We don't ask questions.
Really, they don't? Because they already know everything.
No. Oh, it was just.
You're predestined. Why bother? You know?
I just had a question more about sleep. You were talking about sleep apnea, which my husband is dealing with that and doing very well with that. So I'm very proud of him.
We're very proud of you.
Do that. Very good with that. But as far as insomnia, what do you define as insomnia?
Not being able to, either not being able to get to sleep, or early awakening, or awakening in the night. Insomnia is almost impossible to treat. Okay, it's almost impossible. Sleep apnea, yes, but not insomnia.
How does that affect you then? Because you were talking a little bit, you touched more on sleep apnea than the insomnia.
Insomnia is hard to treat. I like a lot of what's called sleep hygiene. All right. One of the things about alcohol is that alcohol, if you want to have a glass of wine, I don't have any problem with that. I like my patients to have at least 2 or 3 nights a week where they don't drink any alcohol. Okay, but one of the things that alcohol does, especially when you've had 3 or 4, and I went to, I'm not in judgment here, because I went to the UVA in the 60s. Okay, I've had plenty of alcohol in my life. Okay? But alcohol, and you already know this. Let's say one night that someone's serving margaritas, and you have 3 of them, and you go back and you go, whoa, man, I'm a little. What'll happen? You wake up at 2 a.m. and your heart's just beating like crazy. Boom, 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 boom. It also prevents you every night from going into that 3rd level of sleep. And that is where a lot of the really healthy things happen to your brain. Like there are these little Pac-Man things called microglia, and they come and they eat all that amyloid and eat the bad stuff. If you have been high and you've got a lot of alcohol, you won't get into that deep sleep. When you get up and you have to go back to sleep, some people almost panic. They lay down and they're saying, I won't get back to sleep. I know I won't. What you do is you lay down and you say, I don't give a damn whether I go back to sleep. I gotta smoke a joint or something. Not that. But just don't take that so heavily, okay? All right.
Yeah, I understand that heavy sleep does help, or the REM, I think is that REM that you're talking about? Yes. That actually helps you with your memory. It helps your brain to retain more with what you experienced.
Exactly. And short-term memories and medium-term memories are stored in long-term chambers in the heart during sleep, deep sleep. Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? I feel like I'm at the Price is Right. Here we go. Yeah. Yes. wondering if you would recap your 4 points, both of your sets of 4 points, please.
Right. One, smile. 2, don't give up. 3, I might have left out because I've been talking too long. But all right, 3 is embrace new roles. Let's say that you have gotten to the point in your life where you can't travel, you can't you can't volunteer because you whatever. But you might have things that have been very important in your life. Let's say that your husband is gone and you are someone that he loved the free enterprise system. And you would like to have some sort of memorial to him. And you go to the high school or you go to Belmont Abbey. There's a plaque over there that says, this conference room was donated by a man who loved the free enterprise system. That was my father-in-law. He was a tough guy, by the way. But don't give up on having an effect in life. Okay? It's going to be different. You're not Prince Hamlet anymore. Okay? But it is. But we still have effect. You can have it here at the church. You can't take your money with you, and so try to still connect and have impact. Don't give up on yourself. So embrace new roles. And then the last is accepting loss. We have a lot of patients that I see transiently that have abnormal grief reactions, where the grief becomes an obsession, and they can't get beyond it, and so we have to work through that. So that's one of the things about accepting loss.
Thank you. I think we've got one back here, and then I'll get the one that I just saw there.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Edwards, I think I remember in your book you mentioned the benefits of exercise, and you didn't say that tonight, so I was just wondering about exercise.
Well, you know, I got exercise wrong because at first, before I did the research, one of the first things that happen in patients that get dementia is they get apathetic, and there are no people that are apathetic in a gym. Okay. Now, what drives me crazy about exercise is that you have a bunch of crazy people who want to outdo everybody, okay? You want to go and you want to walk a 5K. And at the end, you know, you meet this woman that's sweating all over the place and she's going like crazy. And she said, what'd you do? He said, well, I just walked 5K. And she said, really? Yeah, I've just done 25 and I'm going to do another 25K. Well, you hate her. And you hate yourself, okay? So what we've done, just with politics, we've allowed the crazy people to take the space where we feel good about ourselves. Now, there's a substance. I'm trying to see about the. It's called. Well, it's a substance that's made in smooth muscle when we exercise, and if you take that substance that you can take out of the brain and you dip it on a neuron, it all of a sudden starts to get larger and it interstate. So there's a positive effect. BND. It was discovered out at the University of California, but we want that to flood. But we don't have to do much to get it. As we age, if we have a long driveway, we get up in the morning, and every morning we go down the end of that driveway and come back and maybe go again, we have triggered some of that BDNF. Okay, BDNF. So I don't like, I hate these stickers so you've just done your first run, the 5K. And you come back to your car and you're sitting on the back and you're tired and you're really proud of yourself, and the guy next to you has got a 10K sticker on his. And he kind of looks at you and you don't have a sticker. And then that guy next to him is a 25K. And then the guy next to him's got 100K. So it's all crazy. So be, you know, I love going in swimming pools. because you can't fall, and you are weightless, and the exercise is terrific cardiovascular-wise. I don't like in my patients treadmills because they lose their, and you watch it, you know. You'll be exercising and all of a sudden you'll see this guy come in, he's got a little Parkinson's or whatever, and you make the diagnosis right away. He jumps on the treadmill, and after 2 steps, he's gone. You know, he's up against the wall and everybody's over there. And I should have, I feel like, I should have told him, you know. But exercise, there is a lot of, I like the rituals. I like rituals, and I like the fact that people exercise. It means that you value yourself, and it also helps with that talking, that dialogue you have with yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
A little bit off topic, but are you a James Bond fan?
I do like James Bond, but I'm a big Sean Connery fan. You know, these other guys were, you know, sort of Johnny Come Lately.
The reason I ask is the instant you began quoting Tennyson, Deb and I looked at each other because M quotes that exact theme in Skyfall.
Oh, really? Oh, I love that. It's interesting about the poem. It's the last lines of his poem about Ulysses. And when I read it, it was sent to me when I was in the military, and it was sent to me. And when I read it, I said, finally, an old guy can write about his experience with age. And he was 23 years old when he wrote that poem. Go figure.
Excuse me, the testing that's done, what is it called, the neurological
Neuropsychological testing.
A lot of people that I've talked to have, whether it's relatives or friends, have talked about this, and it's been recommended that they take that test, but they're afraid to do so because of what it might show.
Okay.
They're afraid it's going to be something.
All right. So, neuropsychological testing is a double-edged sword. Are there any neuropsychological testing people here? Does anybody do that for a living? No. Okay, good. Because I don't use it. We have 2 or 3 different tests that are pretty straightforward. We use the MMSE and the MOCA. But for my patients who are older, neuropsychological testing sometimes takes 4 or 5 hours, costs you about $3,000, $4,000. It is too much. And my patients come out of there feeling that they are really stupid and it's too much for them. It is more for people who are looking for what would be a good career, or let's say you're the president of NCNB and they think you're a little fuzzy. You're going to have to go through it. I'm not so sure the bankers aren't all a little fuzzy, but I don't want to come down too hard, but we do not send our patients for that neuropsychological testing because it is devastating. They get exhausted and they feel like that they're more impaired than they are.
I've got 2 comments. One is, if you haven't read the book, Much Abides, get it, read it, and reread it, because so much of what he's talked about tonight is in there. But one thing that you talk about a lot in the book, that I have found very helpful for me is, I retired 3 years ago. Finding something else to do once you retire is huge. Your book just gave me inspiration for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. One of the things that I write about in the book is the processes you go through to find what that is that you want to do. I like people to have 6 months or a year where they don't do anything. I don't want them to feel that pressure. And then I want them to think about what it was like. I know this is an upper class metaphor, but the day that you got in the car to drive to your college, your mom and dad are in the front, you're in the back, your sister might be sitting next to you. What was on your mind that day? What were you good at? It might have been you were a great clarinet player, and you've forgotten that you were really good at the clarinet because life has beat you up. You were a banker, and you now judge yourself on this left brain, okay? And that clarinet player is over there playing a little George Gershwin, trying to get your attention. And then all of a sudden you pick it up and you go, and there's another guy down the street that plays a saxophone, and the next thing you know, you got a gig. So and it doesn't have to be earth-shattering. It can be so simple. It doesn't have, that's one of the problems with us boomers. Okay, we are the most successful Americans, the most successful generation ever to live. We have the best educations, we've made the most money, and yet, what do we learn from it? Somehow, when we're relaxing and we're in our retirement, we feel like that we don't measure up anymore. It's not fair. So here we are, boomers, and we've learned to compare ourselves with people. Those comparisons are very, very damaging because it robs you. It thinks that you're supposed to be like someone else. And what we do is we need you, what's unique about you, to contribute. Okay? Takes away your confidence in yourself when you compare yourself to others.